Midnight, we're back on the set. We shoot the scene again, from the moment before the punch. Wait! Rose yells at me. I stop, look at her. She slugs me. Pain, hand to nose, blood. Look back at her. To hell with you, my favorite line. Then I run off. Cut, set up, go again, from Cameron. So it's sneeze out the blood sponge, wipe face, insert new blood sponge, back up to positions, breathe hard, do it again 24 times.
Titanic Talk with Nelson Aspin and Alexandra Boyd. Here we feature stories from the independent documentary Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, and everything to do with the iconic ship. From James Cameron's epic, groundbreaking movie to the history and legacy of Titanic herself. Actors, historians, authors, descendants, and fans come here to talk about Titanic. This is your first-class ticket to everything aboard the Ship of Dreams.
I'm Nelson Aspin, and this is another episode of Titanic Talk, which is the podcast especially for those who love the 1997 James Cameron film version of Titanic, because that spawned the documentary Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, which then spawned Titanic Talk. And the filmmaker behind that documentary, Alexandra Boyd, is of course my co-host, and we have a special treat, one of the most recognizable and beloved character actors from the film Titanic. Alexandra, please do the honors.
I certainly will. Thank you, Nelson. And thank you to Mark Capri, who I met not on the set of Titanic, because obviously we weren't in the same scene. I was not in the scene where you got punched in the nose by Kate Winslet about 43 times. But we met because of this extraordinary network of supporting actors that grew out of being in the film. And then we did a play together. We did Educating Rita. So we must talk about all those things. Welcome, accomplished actor Mark Capri.
Yay!
All right. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
Yes, and it's so. I also have to mention that we shot a significant amount of our interviews in Ship of Dreams in your beautiful house where you are right now in the Hollywood Hills. So I want to officially thank you for lending us that beautiful location. I think a lot of times documentaries, they sort of plonk people down and blur out the background, so you could be sort of sitting anywhere. And I was like, no blurring. We want to see the background and all the foliage and the beautiful light.
I'm glad we could make use of it. The bits I've seen, the lighting is great. Somebody did a good job.
Well, I think it's called beautiful. California. Southern California did a really good job.
California sunlight.
Well, and Mark, I'm going to kick this off about as it relates to James Cameron's Titanic, because your role, while small in the grand scheme of things, is so memorable. So taking the getting your nose bloodied by Kate Winslet when you're just trying to do her a favor by saving her life, one of the most memorable moments, and it sometimes often elicits cheers. I've seen different audiences where they cheer when she punches you because they're trying to follow her. So tell us how you auditioned for the film, and then we just want to hear about the experience of that famous scene.
I love that scene. I've told the story so many times but this little scene was written at the very last minute. It wasn't in the original script, and I think Cameron needed a segue from the love story, such as it was between Leo and Kate, to a really intense disaster movie, the sinking of the ship. And this scene was the sort of transition that changed the tone completely. And this little character I played is not a joke. He's having a panic moment. and it sets the tone for the rest of the movie. So I think that's why people remember it, is because the movie's different from that scene on. It was an intense couple of days down there in Rosarita Beach. I went down on the morning of the night that it shot. So I flew down to Mexico with another actor, and we auditioned for James Cameron on the set of in Rosarita Beach, and the audition was just run the scene as best we could, making the lines up, apart from the last line, which was scripted, but the rest of it was ad-libbed. So myself and the other actor ad-libbed with Kate, who was a total sweetheart to work with both of us. I had known her before because we had some mutual friends in London, and so we did the scene, and literally after, competition was exactly one other actor, and at the end of it, Cameron came up and put his hand on my shoulder, which meant you've got the part. He didn't say the words, he just put his hand on my shoulder. So Kate gave me a big hug, and I went to work, and the other actor was given another part, so it wasn't a waste of time for him. Then I started working at midnight or something that night, but I had been told that I could leave as soon as I finished working and get back to Los Angeles, where I was in a play. So everybody had stories of their working on the set down there in Mexico for 6 months or 18 months, or in your case, I think you were there for a year or something.
Not a year, no, but it was a long time.
Forever. My whole MO was to get back home. I was trying to get out, I loved getting the job and doing the scene, but I had another job and I needed to get home. So my whole point of view was to get it over with and get back on a plane and get back to Los Angeles, which I was told would all happen within 24 hours. And the fact that it took sort of 36 hours or 48 was a big deal, because I had to miss a performance and an understudy had to go on home. It was, it's all in my little diary.
Mark, you described that so well in the documentary that it just has me, every time I see it, I'm on the edge of my seat, even though I know what the outcome is. No spoilers here. But I think what it is as a fellow actor is that thing that was instilled in me when I was a dancer. Things like, if you put your knickers on inside out, it was absolutely bad luck to change them. Like, go on with your knickers on inside out, because if you try and change them, you're gonna miss your cue. And like, it goes back to like my 16, 17-year-old self, to the only reason you're not on stage is because you're dead. Because we have this
discipline.
That was instilled in me. You do not miss performances, period.
No.
You got to be on your deathbed. Yes. So I had an understudy who was perfectly fine. He was perfectly able to go on for me, but I had a mindset that I had to get home and get back to work.
Yes, and I think every actor who hears that story will totally identify that. Yay, you're in this huge movie with James Cameron. Yeah, but whatever. I'm on stage at 7:30 and I have to leave now.
The scene. It seems
I gotta go home.
Thanks to yours and Kate's acting abilities, it always seems so spontaneous, and yet I'm sure it was exhausting and required multiple takes. So how many takes do you estimate it took, and did you actually did her hand make contact with your face? I mean, the details are so interesting to fans.
Nelson, it took 43 takes. That's why it was not an easy shoot. It was all night long and in this cold, miserable corridor. And Kate was at the end of her tether. It was all perfectly fine for me. I worked exactly one scene, but she was really suffering. And 43 takes, and Cameron is very exacting, and much of what you've heard about his style is true. And that night particularly, because there were technical issues and stuff that were making him crazy. So it was very intense, and it was very tense. And Kate was in tears a lot, real tears, because she was so frustrated and uncomfortable. But for me, it was fine. But we did. She didn't make contact. But there's a bloody sponge up my nose that I actually activated with a. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but she punched me that way, and then I hold my nose, which activates the sponge, and the blood drips down 43 times. All
so
night
you had to
long.
get cleaned up every single time, and
Every
before we
single
doing it.
shot. And
I
we started work at midnight that day. And I suppose maybe she had worked much of the day, but she was exhausted. So it was a tough shoot. I have to say.
Do you think it's the directors? You hear stories about directors there's on one hand exacting and being sure they get the shot they want, but also as a way to manipulate their cast, to fatigue them. You hear stories about this, I don't know, with Coppola or Scorsese
Hitchcock.
or something like that. Yeah, Hitchcock, just trying to exhaust the actors or just play with their minds. Was there any of that going on, do you suppose?
I don't know if Cameron was that devious. I think it was just one of those things where we didn't start until midnight. We didn't finish until 7 in the morning, and there were technical issues. The boom, the little microphone that's at the end of a boom kept getting in the shot, and we would have to stop, and Cameron would blow up at this poor guy, and he would lose his. It was just tense, and it matched the tone of the little scene, but there was genuinely it was genuinely uncomfortable for the actors. Like I say, it was no big deal for me. I had worked exactly one day. I could go through anything. It didn't make any difference. It was the people that this was very late in the shoot as well. And people were exhausted, and Kate was exhausted, and I think the whole crew and team were pretty much over it at that point.
Yeah,
And,
I know
so it was hard.
Speaking now as a director myself, when my tiny little low budget films, the clock is still ticking, and you're still spending other people's money, and I sort of always come to James Cameron's defense now that I understand that feeling of we just have to get everything, and anything that goes wrong, we have to go back to one, just feels like a waste of time. And I can understand the mic getting into the frame, because you were probably in this close proximity, and that poor boy probably couldn't even see the boom guy probably couldn't even see where the mic was. So he's working in the literally kind of in the dark. They can see the frame, and it's in the frame, and then communication breaks down, and it just happens at whatever level on commercial. I've seen it happen on commercial shoots. My tiny little ghost story,
podcast.
Imagine that multiplied by millions and millions on Titanic. I mean, I don't know how everybody didn't have a nervous breakdown. James Cameron notwithstanding, he was probably the most sane one at the end of everything.
Cameron is a consummate professional. He's also a perfectionist and quite a. I have to say it. He can be a bully. I'm sure no one would disagree. But it was because this little scene was written at the last minute, and it was very, very near the end of all of this. It might have been in the last week or two of the whole enterprise, that people were really just at their wits' end.
And yet, look at the enduring effect. I mean, the film itself is iconic, and your small but very specific role is so iconic. And maybe that's why you grew the beard, was to get out from under because you look the same. Aside from the beard, you still look the same. So I would imagine you would be highly recognizable, and that the Titanic has stayed with you over the years. Talk to us about the experience of being in an iconic film and the fan factor. You must have experienced the fan factor.
For some reason, it's getting bigger now than it maybe because it's 25 years. Yeah. I was in another big blockbuster called Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. And that has a phenomenal worldwide, almost cult. And I have not a single week, or never more than 2, has passed in the last 30 years that I haven't gotten some piece of mail in for an autograph. And more recently, after the decades of Star Wars, the mail has started to arrive for Titanic autographs. Maybe Alexandra, you had the same thing, but for some reason I've got my addresses out there, and I get a lot of mail for, and which I always answer. It doesn't, not necessarily the same day, but I get those pictures, and I autograph them and send them back in the self-addressed stamped envelopes. But it's getting bigger, Nelson, not smaller. I think this thing is a worldwide phenomenon.
We've talked to we call them Titanic kids, because there are fans that weren't even born when the film was made.
Yeah.
Who are diehard Titaniacs, our increasing family of Titanic connected folks from both sides of the camera, and it's a beautiful thing. It's not a weird, scary, stalkery thing. It's really kind of a loving thing, and Alexandra's documentary perpetuates that. It cultivates that.
It's also one of the things that I tried to explore. I say in the past tense because I didn't really come up with much about why this film in particular endures. And yes, the expertise, the attention to detail, James Cameron at the head of everything, but it's way beyond that. The history, the continuing commemoration every April the 15th. It's like there's no definitive answer that I could come up with other than just to enjoy the fact that we're all connected by this boat, to memorialize the people who lost their lives, and then circle back on this movie that is part entertainment, part tragedy, part history lesson. And here we are 25 years later still talking about it. And if you remember, when I asked everybody to write a diary, I thought we'd get it published, and we didn't, because it was back in the days when you had to invite a publisher to do that for you. And so in my own way, I've published our 9 diaries through this movie, and really you're only getting the tip of the iceberg, because everybody wrote pages and pages of their experiences on this film. So the legacy will continue, but I still don't really know what the heck.
I think it's partly, this film is just one cog in the Titanic wheel. There's been there's been other films. This terrible tragedy a couple months ago with the submersible getting down there. I was at a Titanic convention in Las Vegas last month, and it was a completely different atmosphere at this convention than at the Star Wars conventions, which are kind of freak shows, and very commercial, and it's all about the merchandise, basically. There wasn't any merchandise. There was, and it was all very reverential. There was a Titanic exhibit in the hotel in Las Vegas where we were in the ballroom, but the exhibit was in another part of the hotel, and they had brought some of the actual ship up from the sea, and there were bits and pieces of it, and it was quite moving. The crowd at the convention in Las Vegas for Titanic were a very reverential, serious, kind of filmy kind of folks who were not just interested in the movie, in James Cameron's movie, but the other Titanic movies, and the tragedy of the submersible, and this is just a story that is with us, and our movie from these years ago is one part of a big story, and I think that's why it's lasting.
We love hearing your recounting of your experiences from your diary in the documentary. Would you honor us with reading an excerpt from some? Choose a selection from your diary.
The diary is mine is probably one of the longer ones, so I'm going to just read a few paragraphs of it. Is that all right?
Perfect.
Great.
All right, here we go. It wasn't a very long drive down, but it was after dark when we arrived. From the highway, as we approached the location, we could see this huge mock-up of the ship towering over the sound stages, floodlit and shining against the black Mexican Sea. I heard so much about it and had a sure image of the original from photos, but seeing this enormous floating palace was different than I expected, like seeing the Eiffel Tower for the first time of the Grand Canyon. Then there was the added element of its being a film set, not the thing itself. It's very weird. Now, the adrenaline started to flow. We were taken to our dressing rooms and shown into one with Steward number 4 on the door. All the rooms had character names on the doors, not actors' names. I noticed Jack and Rose on some doors at the end, but not having read the full script, I didn't know who these characters were. You can leave your bags and stuff here if you want. Let's go over to the wardrobe, a production assistant told us, myself and one other actor. We'll get a costume for you and take you to the set. The wardrobe building was the size of an airplane hangar, corridors of coats and dresses, acres of shoes and hats. We found a section with a row of white uniforms and a longer row of blue ones. What's your size? The wardrober asked. 44 long, I said. That's going to be tough. Most of these guys were much smaller in 1912. They tried something on me. I looked like Jerry Lewis from The Bellboy. The best one that we could find. Because of my size. So the next stop was the tailor. There was a room full of them, all these local guys listening to Mexican easy listening tunes on the radio. These guys were great. It took about 20 minutes and it fit. Only a big brown stain on the sleeve. They couldn't get it out. So now the other actor and I, identically dressed, except for the stain, went back to hang out in the dressing room to look over the sides. These are the individual scenes that we prepare. Only a couple of pages, looked like improvised stuff mostly, but a cool line at the end, I thought, and a bloody nose by the character called Rose, whose door I had seen. This was going to be a lot of fun. I can go on or I can stop.
No, that's awesome. It's a great teaser for the documentary too, because there's some of that in there, but you've actually filled out some of the backstory with the other actor, and that lovely process where you've even woven in the sound of the easy listening and the way it looked. I mean, everybody was a writer of those diaries. That some people looked at me and they went, "Did you rewrite this for me? Did I write this?" Of course you wrote it. Of course, I would never do that. I would never.
I'm not a writer, but I'm married to a writer, so I know what good writing, reads like. I can't come anywhere near that, but this one was just a lucky piece of prose because it was very fresh in my mind, and it was emotional. So all I did was just.
That's right. That's another thing that's come up too, is that people, when they read their diaries for the documentary, I was quite specific, like, don't read it beforehand, don't practice. I don't mind if you make a mistake. I want you to have a fresh memory of those memories that are 25 years old, because they change and they grow. But when you read something that you wrote 25 years ago, it's so fresh, and it really does, like, gosh, I really did do that. That really did happen.
And people get emotional. It's a beautiful thing. Where has Titanic fallen in the years since? When it comes on television, do you watch it, or do you just is it not on your radar?
I haven't seen it since it was released. It's just in the rearview mirror. I'm mostly a stage actor. I do plays and musicals. I just finished one last week. And that's my bread and butter. I love doing film and television because the work is interesting. It's usually a shorter gig, unless you're like Alexandra on one set for a year and a half. But it's usually short and sweet, and they're little cameo parts that I play. But on stage, it's a lot of work because I've had a long sort of classical career for the last 50 years, played everything in every theater in the world, and that's where I concentrate. So this movie was a beautiful little hiccup in an otherwise sort of stage actor's life.
Alexandra mentioned educating Rita, that the two of you did that together years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, Alex, I saw that production. Where did you do it?
Long Beach, wasn't it? Or somewhere?
South Beach. What?
I came down and I saw that because when I was living in Los Angeles.
Somewhere on the coast. Yeah.
And you were dealing with the accent. You had a funny regional accent, as I recall.
I had to be Liverpool, and everyone said I did a really nice Cockney accent, I was like, no, not a Cockney accent. It was a Liverpool accent.
They can't tell the difference.
You know, they couldn't tell the difference. And my Liverpool accent, I'm not going to do it now, but it is rather good. And we had a great, the only challenge I remember of that was it was a two-hander play, which means a lot of words for two people. And we had something like 2 weeks rehearsal, which was
that was intense. Trying to remember the words.
Enough. And, you know, I've since learned, and I've been offered other jobs like that. Tennessee Williams, oh, it's 2.5 weeks rehearsal. I was like, no, because I have a flashback to Rita. And I'm like, no, every play has a gestation period of at least 3 weeks, and then a half a week of tech and then some previews. By the time we closed, we were ready to open. It was a bit naughty, and things.
Well, you know that's a sort of small theater syndrome. In the bigger theaters, they give you a little more time.
No, do you have anything coming up?
Oh, do I have anything coming up? No. Oh, thankfully, no. A little rest, and it's so exhausting. You know, at any age, but at mine, these big musical jobs, playing big parts and stuff. I love it, and it's a great privilege. It's a great privilege to have a long, solid acting career. It's what people are in the business for. All the glamour and fame and everything. That's cherry on the top. Just staying busy and working is a wonderful privilege for an actor. And I've been lucky enough to do it for all these decades, but I enjoy the rests between gigs just as much.
Literally are resting, literally resting. Thank you very much. Not euphemistically resting, as in sadly out of work.
No, I'm sleeping and yeah.
And you'll never, I mean, that's the marvelous thing about an actor's life, for all of the frustrations that go along with it. But you're never too old to be an actor. You said you've been doing this for 50 years. You always do it.
There's always old character guys. You can work as long as you want to, as long as you
That's
can.
why I like the Fantastics. You could start out as the teenager playing the boy and continue on to be the fathers and the old actors. There's a role for men of any age in the Fantastics, which I think is marvelous. Well, I think, Mark, that you need to, since you haven't seen your work in Titanic since it was released in theaters, it might be time to revisit it. Maybe snuggle up with loved ones at home and watch it with some popcorn, and you might see it in a whole new light 25 years later.
I'd love to. I'll watch it again. But first, I'm going to watch Ship of Dreams. I can't wait to watch.
And your puppy is in it too. Rufus is in it too.
Rufus is in it.
Yes,
Hallelujah.
he's totally featured. Yes, and your beautiful garden and everything. Yeah.
Your non-union
Rufus
dog.
is my dog, for those who don't know.
Non-union dog.
Mark, we're so grateful that you gave us the gift of your time today for Titanic Talk, and we hope it rejuvenates your love for your work in that film, which means a lot to all of the Titaniacs. It really does.
I'm so grateful for that opportunity and for this, to talk to you guys.
Great to see you again.
Take care.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review. And if you'd like to hear more podcasts like this, hit the subscribe button. For information on where you can see Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, go to shipofdreamsfilm.com. Titanic Talk is a production of Ship of Dreams Film Limited. To celebrate Season 2 of Titanic Talk, we've launched a line of Titanic Talk merch. A cap, a mug, a tote, a t-shirt or a hoodie. You'll be sure to find a unique gift for the Titaniac in your life. Look for the link in the notes and on Instagram, or go to bit.ly/Titanic Talk Shop. And Nelson has a new book out. Dancing Between the Raindrops is a steamy page-turner full of all the tales Nelson can still remember from New York City in the 1980s. It's a coming-of-age story about friends in the era of big hair, padded shoulders, and punk rock. Dancing Between the Raindrops is available on Amazon, or ask for it at your local bookstore.